Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker. A time of fire, steel, and sudden terror. We're diving into what life was really like during a Viking raid. Forget the romanticized castles and chivalry Hollywood sold you. The truth is you probably wouldn't survive the first hour. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 845 AD. The good news? You're alive. The slightly less good news? A storm of violence waits outside your door. You open your eyes to a thatched roof above you, the soft glow of dawn filtering through woven reeds, and the faint scent of last night's cooking embers clinging to the air. Your bed is little more than a pile of straw stuffed into a wooden frame, covered by a coarse wool blanket that smells faintly of sheep and smoke. Your muscles ache from yesterday's work, and your back reminds you that life is woven through toil. There are no pillows, no memory foam, no mattress springs, just rough comfort beneath your body and the echo of roosters crowing in the distance. You push yourself up and swing your bare feet over the side of the bed, toes touching cold, hard-packed earth. The morning chill seeps through your soles, a reminder that medieval walls do little to keep out the cold. You stand, stretching stiff limbs, and notice your family's hut, one small room with a low ceiling, its walls blackened by soot, illuminated by a single candle stub that stubbornly burned through the night. The wooden floorboards creak under your weight. Across the room, your younger sibling stirs under a second blanket, still unconscious of the day ahead. Livestock huddle in a corner, chickens cluck softly, a pig grunts, and a goat bleats, all sharing your cramped shelter. The smell is a pungent mix of animal musk, damp hay, and yesterday's stew, but this is home. You step outside, blinking against the weak sunlight, and inhale deeply. This is morning in a Viking Age village. Families already stirring, smoke rising from cooking fires, and the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer echoing like a heartbeat across the river. A few neighbors gather at the communal well, dipping wooden buckets into cool water. Children, half awake, chase each other with wooden swords, their laughter carrying across fields of barley and oats. Dogs bark in the distance, herding geese that squawk indignantly. You pause to greet a friend, exchanging news of the crops and livestock. It's a scene of peaceful routine, the very definition of idyllic, until the first warning sign cracks the bubble. At first, it's barely perceptible, a faint thrum in the distance, like the low growl of an approaching storm or the distant roll of thunder. You glance at your neighbor, whose brow furrows as the sound deepens, gaining rhythm. Children stop mid-laugh, birds still mid-flap. The blacksmith's hammer strike falters. Conversations hush. Hate no, the soft trample of many boots wading through shallow water. Curiosity and dread mix in your chest as you realize that this is no thundercloud but something alive, moving with purpose. You sprint toward the riverbank with others, hearts hammering. There, on the horizon where river meets sky, you see them, longships, their prows carved like snarling dragons, slicing through mist and water. The vessels glide with an almost silent menace, their oars rising and falling in perfect unison, like a grotesque dance. Banners snap in the breeze, marking the first time you've ever seen the sigil of the North. Men clad in leather, iron, and furs stand tall on deck, shields slung across their backs, helmets gleaming dully in the new light. The sight alone sends a cold wave through your spine. Villagers whisper prayers to gods old and new, crossing themselves or grasping wooden idols, hoping for protection. Panic blooms instantly. You turn back toward the village, adrenaline surging. Mothers yank children into their arms, husbands grab tools or scythes, neighbors call warnings as the first ships ground against the muddy bank. The tranquil hum of dawn shatters into chaos. You dash through winding lanes between huts, the door of your home banging open as you seize whatever you can, your father's old knife, a length of rope, a wooden pail. The sky fills with shouts. Brother, sister, run, and the ground trembles under the stamping feet of men and animals fleeing in terror. The longship's crews disembark swiftly. You glimpse the first clash across the river. A peaceful herdsman stands his ground as a Viking warrior charges, axe raised high. The man's eyes widen as steel meets hide, and he crumples without a cry. You look away, stomach lurching, but there's no time to process grief. Nearby, a Viking with braided hair and fur-lined cloak grabs an armful of sheep, dragging them toward the shore. Another swings a torch at a thatched roof. Flames lick the dry reeds greedily, shedding sparks that drift like malevolent fireflies. You crouch behind a stack of firewood, heart pounding so loudly you fear it might betray your hiding place. Sweat beads at your temples, your breath shallow as you watch the invading force spread through your village with ruthless efficiency. The baker's wife, apron stained and hands empty, raises her arms pleadingly. But the invader spits at her, then hacks at her skirts, sending her stumbling into the dirt. The priest in his coarse robes tries to shield a wounded neighbor with his body, raising a wooden cross. But an axe severs the weapon in two, and he falls, eyes wide with disbelief. Children cling to legs already slick with blood. The smoke thickens, stinging eyes and coating lungs with ash. You realize you can't stay hidden behind this flimsy stack forever. The fire will spread, or the raiders will flush you out. Summoning every shred of courage, you bolt toward the tree lean beyond the huts. Your bare feet press into damp grass, blades bending but offering no comfort. Behind you, a rough shout, too late, they've spotted you. You break into a stumbling run, lungs burning, not daring to look back. But their boots are faster, heavier. You feel a rough hand clamp your shoulder, jerking you sideways. You collapse, face pressed into mud, eyes seeing nothing but blurred movement and foam at your lips. They drag you back toward the center of the village, past burning embers and bodies. Your wrists burn where rough rope binds them, and your legs ache from the sudden stop. You skid to a halt before a half-collapsed fence, thrown to your knees alongside a dozen others, women with hair matted in soot, men clutching splintered spears, a boy no older than 10 shuddering beside you. Silence falls, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. The Viking leader strides forward, cloak swirling, helmet creaking. He surveys his captives with cold, flat eyes, his axe slung casually over one shoulder. He speaks in a grating tongue you don't fully understand, but the meaning is clear. Some live, some die, some become slaves. His men move through the kneeling villagers with brutal pragmatism. One points a finger at an old man whose life has little value except as a meal. Another nods to a young woman whose strength marks her for captivity. You feel yourself pushed forward, separated from your family, your home, your life. Nearby, the blacksmith's wife sobs, staring at the charred remains of the forge where her husband fell. She looks at you, eyes hollow, and you realize you shared the same fate. No escape, just the cold certainty of being torn from everything you know. As the leader signals, 2 warriors seize your arms and haul you toward the longships waiting at the river's edge. The flames behind you reflect off rippling water, painting the scene in hellish orange and crimson. You're forced aboard a ship, shoved between rows of shields propped against the hull. The deck pitches gently beneath your knees as the vessel floats free of the bank. The oars dip into the river, and the rhythmic splash begins again. You stare at the smoking village in the distance, hardly recognizing the place you called home just moments ago. The flame-streaked sky darkens, ash drifting like snow. You wonder how many hours have passed. You've lost count, but a glance at the sun tells you it's still morning. This is only the first hour of the raid, and already your world has been shattered. As the longship cuts through the water, you're left to absorb the weight of what has happened. Your hands are slick with dirt and fear, your throat raw from screaming and sobbing. Behind you, the captives whisper prayers, curses, anything to fill the silence between the steady or strokes. You realize there's no going back, no rescue party, no hidden passage home. The only certainty is the cold, hard truth of Viking conquest, swift, brutal, and absolute. This has been your first hour. Soon, the ship will reach the next settlement, and the cycle will begin again. Only this time, you'll bear witness from the inside. But for now, your heartbeat is the only sound you can trust, each thump a reminder that you're still alive, still conscious of the terror that unfolds. And as the river's current carries you away from everything you've known, you understand that surviving the first hour of a Viking raid was the easy part. The hard part begins now. Hey, you're still with me, good. Now the longship rocks gently as dawn light filters through the mist, fingers of pale gold dancing on rippling water. The oarsmen maintain their steady rhythm, each dip and rise drawing you farther from the only home you've ever known. Around you, the captives share stolen glances, wide, haunted eyes that betray exhaustion and terror. Some whisper prayers to gods whose names have become a desperate litany, Odin, Thor, Jesus, whatever deity might lend mercy in this sea of violence. Others simply stare at the water, as if hoping the river will open and swallow them whole. You remain crouched between shields, arms bound tight, knees digging into the damp deck planks. Your palms tingle from the rough rope and the chill of dawn air. The scent of salt and smoke clings to the breeze, a stark contrast to the earthy odors of your village. Every creak of the wood beneath you, every splash of an oar, magnifies your heartbeat. You keep your head low, trying not to draw attention, but the leader's axe-bearer, broad shoulders and a braided beard stiff with ice, casts a sidelong glance, then smirks, baring teeth yellowed by years of raid camp rations. He spits into the river and turns away, resuming his silent patrol of the galley. As the ship glides upriver, you feel every muscle protest, calves locked stiff, spine curved in constant crouch, shoulders throbbing. The cold air bites at exposed skin, and you flinch each time a droplet of spray kisses your face. Around you, others shift, trying to find a slightly less painful position, but there is none. The shields pressing in from both sides leave no room to stretch. A child whimpers softly a few feet ahead, his bonnet soaked with tears, and you imagine your own younger sibling, now motherless and fatherless, wandering the burning ashes of home. That thought grips your heart so fiercely you struggle not to scream. Somewhere behind the oarsmen, the ship's prow cuts through the misty current, the dragon head's carved jaws agape as if devouring the fog itself. Occasionally, you hear a shout, a command to push harder, to steer toward a narrow bend, and the oars shift accordingly, water spraying as the longship hugs the bank. At one point, you glimpse a stone watchtower half hidden by trees, its grim silhouette a silent witness to countless raids passing beneath its gaze. Today, it offers no aid. The archers posted atop that wall have long since fled, or worse, leaving only shadows and empty battlements. Hunger gnaws at your stomach. You haven't eaten since dawn before the raid, an awkward handful of barley and cheese swallowed in the half-light of your hut. Now your stomach rumbles, echoing hollowly off the wooden hull. You remember the jar of honey your mother stashed by the door for a sweet treat. Its warm sweetness now taunts you from a distance. You press your lips together, willing the ache to subside, but every breath makes you wish for just a taste of hot porridge or a wartime ration of salted fish. The captives shuffle, restless. An older woman nearby coughs, hacking through blackened lungs, and you realize the smoke from burning thatch still clings to your clothes. She clutches a faded apron to her chest, tears streaking through soot on her cheeks, and murmurs, "Why do they do this?" You have no answer, only raw fear, the bitter tang of loss, and the knowledge that your life has been reduced to waiting for a decision, slave or death. You glance at the leader again. He stands at the stern now, tall as a tower, one hand resting on the hilt of his sword. His helmet, adorned with a single raven feather, catches the weak sunlight, casting a twisted reflection on the water. His face is scarred, one long line across his cheek, another across his jaw, each a testament to battles survived. Yet his eyes gleam with excitement, as if each raid is a grand adventure, not a tragic ending for so many souls cramped beneath shields. Time loses meaning. The river's slow current carries you past forests of pine, where the pine's needles whisper secrets you cannot decipher. The air warms gradually as the sun climbs higher, but the chill grips your bones still, the memory of morning frost lingering under layers of fear. Occasionally, the oars cease their rhythm, and you hear the thud of a steering board being adjusted. Then oars resume, the boat pivots, and you drift toward a new stretch of water. You search the riverbank for signs, smoke, plumes of dust, but see only trees and undergrowth, silent watchers. Suddenly, a shout rings out, a different voice, harsh, urgent. The oars freeze, human bodies floating motionless except for the subtle heave of breath. You press your ear to the deck, straining. Footsteps thunder overhead as the leader and a handful of warriors run forward, swords drawn. Your stomach lurches, but then the footsteps recede, the oars start again, and you exhale, the breath catching in your throat. Maybe it was a wild animal. Maybe a scouting party spotted something. Food, people, treasure. You will never know. The longship pushes on, leaving the unanswered questions trailing in its wake. With afternoon light now filtering through leaves, the journey stretches on. The captives grow restless. Some rock back and forth, murmuring prayers. Others weep softly into torn sleeves. You close your eyes for a moment, cradling your head in your hands, aching for sleep, for oblivion, for anything less than the crushing reality above you. But fear has a way of keeping every sense razor sharp. You can't sleep. You can't even look away. Suddenly, the river widens into a great expanse, and the longship slows. The woods recede, revealing rocky banks where wolves might prowl once the humans depart. Ahead, the hull grinds against stone. The oars free from the water with a collective scrape, and the oarsmen leap from their benches, releasing the rope bindings on the captives. Your wrists ache with the sudden slack, but no one moves, still too stunned to even stand. Overhead, a Viking shouts a command, guttural and brusque. The others follow suit, slapping each other's shields, voices echoing off rock faces. You rise unsteadily, knees knocking, and step onto the slick stone. Around you, the landscape is eerily peaceful. Lily pads drift on a small pool, birds call from canopy perches, and a gentle breeze stirs leafy branches. The contrast between serenity and the brutality you endured is suffocating. You stumble forward, one hand pressed to throat, the other wiping ash from your cheek. A husk of a man, once full of life, heaves on a nearby rock, eyes glassy. You swear you can hear the echo of the battle behind you, the clash of steel, the cries of the fallen, but there is only the soft rustle of leaves. The leader approaches you, still unreadable, still imposing. He points downstream with his spear, then to the nearest shoreline, and finally to the group of captives. A guttural sentence emerges. You are to drop your bundle of meager belongings, line up, and follow. Those who resist will be cut down. Your throat tightens, but you obey, dropping to your knees to unfasten the simple satchel slung across your shoulder. You place it on the ground. Inside, a few coins, your mother's carved wooden talisman, and a piece of cloth meant for cleaning. They belong to the earth now. Lined up, you shuffle forward, barefoot feet slipping on moss and stone. Each step echoes like a confession. Behind you, smoke still coils above the longship, and the oarsmen watch with bored curiosity, leaning on their shields. You wonder if they feel any remorse, any shadow of doubt. But the silence says no, they are raiders, and this is their way of life. As you disembark fully, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a shallow pool, dirt-smeared skin, ash-lined hair, eyes rimmed in red. You hardly recognize the person staring back, more a shadow than a human. A child behind you weeps quietly, clutching an older sister's ragged sleeve. A man 2 spots ahead staggers, and you reach to steady him, but your arms tremble, and you drop back in fear of drawing attention. You swallow guilt, swallow shame, and move on. You traverse a narrow path carved between boulders, the only way forward. Warriors flank your sides, swords at the ready, ensuring no one breaks rank. The path slopes upward, winding toward a rocky plateau where horses wait, saddled and restless. The journey up feels endless, every breath a burned ember in your lungs, every step a battle against gravity and exhaustion. Sweat beads along your hairline despite the cool air, and your legs burn with lactic acid, as if you climbed 1,000 hills. Finally, you reach the plateau. The horses snort and paw the ground, nostrils flaring. A warrior tilts your chin upward, barking an order. You kneel before a massive steed, its coat dappled gray, muscles rippling beneath thick fur. The warrior forces you upward, urging you to mount. Your arms wrap awkwardly around its neck, your legs barely clearing its flanks. You manage to grip a coarse mane as if it were a lifeline. Two warriors position themselves, one holding your foot, the other steadying the saddle horn, until, unsteadily, you're strapped in. Your heart threatens to burst from your chest, and for a moment you believe you might faint. Hooves clatter as the horses move, carrying you toward an unknown fate. The wind whips your hair, and you taste metal on your tongue, blood, perhaps, from a bitten lip. The landscape falls away in a blur of green and gray, and you close your eyes, wishing this to be a nightmare you will wake from. But the rhythm of the ride, the jingle of armor, and the distant cry of crows overhead remind you that every second of this waking horror is real. So here you are, captured, dispirited, and carried away on horseback by Viking warriors. The first hours showed you terror in its rawest form. The next hours will teach you something far more insidious. How quickly the captor's indifference can become your new reality. How hunger compounds fear. How the simple longing for home can grow into a hunger stronger than any bread or water. And in this endless landscape, far from the river that bore you here, you will learn that survival is not just about staying alive. It's about holding on to hope when everything familiar is gone. And so the raid continues, not with clashing steel but with the hollow cadence of refugee steps beneath distant shields, with the restless beat of hooves on ancient earth, and with the slow-burning knowledge that your life will never be the same. And so, the caravan presses onward under a sky shifting from pale gold to muted gray, the trail winding through forests that are silent except for the steady clip-clop of hooves and the occasional rustle of small creatures at the forest's edge. The warriors flank you still, their silhouettes rigid against the trees, spears at the ready for any attempt at escape, though by now you know escape is a fantasy. Your mind drifts to thoughts of home, the fields you tilled, the laughter of family around the dinner hearth, the taste of fresh milk warmed by your mother's hand. But here, each memory feels like an echo from a world you cannot return to, a place you might never see again. Your knuckles, white from gripping the saddle's rawhide, ache like they will crack, yet you dare not loosen your grip, fear that any slack might send you tumbling into the undergrowth where wolves or worse might find you first. The path narrows as you ascend a gentle ridge, the forest yielding to open moorland. Low scrub brushes against your legs, coarse and unrelenting. The wind carries the tang of salt from a distant sea, and you realize that this road must lead toward the heart of Viking territory, where captives are sold, where swords are forged, where the price of a life is debated in smoky halls. Around you, the other captives shuffle in their stirrups, faces drawn and pale. A woman near the front nurses a small child whose eyes are swollen from crying. The child reaches out, hand trembling, and you want to lift him close, to whisper that everything will be okay, but you're powerless to offer more than a silent prayer. Hours pass, or is it days? Time no longer flows in measured segments, but in moments of unbearable discomfort. Hunger gnaws at your belly, but there is no bread. Thirst scorches your throat, but there is no water. At midday, one warrior dismounts with a curt gesture, leading a horse to a stream just off the trail. He drinks deeply, then splashes water onto his face while you watch from your saddle, desperate for a single sip. Your stomach twists in protest. Behind you, the child cries again, and the woman presses his head against her chest, rocking him gently, as if soothing him might stave off the ache of an empty belly. You close your eyes, wishing you two could fold into someone's arms and drift away. But drift you cannot. The leader's shadow falls across your path as he approaches on horseback, gray cloak flapping. He stops beside you, eyes studying your face, your dirt-streaked, tear-stained face, and for a heartbeat you see something flicker there, curiosity or contempt, it's impossible to tell. He grips the reins of your horse, dragging you to a halt. Your heart hammers so fiercely you wonder if it will burst through your ribs. He leans close, voice a grating whisper you barely understand, a command, perhaps asking your name or your origin. You stare back, unable to recall the language you once spoke so fluently. You want to answer, but the words stick in your throat. He snorts, turns his horse, and signals to move on. The world tilts as your horse steps forward, and you exhale in relief that you didn't speak, or that you spoke and he didn't understand. The road descends now, bringing you closer to a coastline littered with smooth stones and driftwood. Gulls wheel overhead, their cries shrill and mocking. Below, beyond a shelter of seagrass, you glimpse the glint of longship prows beached along the shore, sails furled, hulls stained dark by salt and blood. The warriors angle their ride toward that sandy expanse, and your heart pounds at the sight, knowing this is the edge of your old world and the threshold to whatever fate awaits. When you dismount again, your legs wobble beneath you, and you collapse onto damp sand, the cold seeping through your trousers. Others join you, falling to knees or faces, some retching at the sight of old wounds or simply the shock of sudden stillness. The wind whips hair across your eyes, and you blink to clear the salt stinging your vision. Behind you, the longships lie silent, their dragon-headed prows now merely hollow mouths beached on the shore. The sea's waves lap at sand, indifferent to the suffering that surrounds them. A trio of warriors strides toward a crude wooden pen where livestock, goats, pigs, a few ducks, are shackled. They prod the animals with spear shafts, herding them into the enclosure. A monumental table stands nearby, scarred by axe blows. Atop it, helmets, broken shields, and a trove of coin pouches glint in the late afternoon sun. This is the market, captives to be bartered, sold, or held for ransom. You realize your entire life from this moment will be weighed against silver pieces and the fickle whims of traders. As the captives are lined up before the table, you stand among them, a trembling column of conquered souls. The leader appears again, laying heavy coins onto the table, the metal ringing like a death knell. He points at each captive in turn, and a trader, gaunt and cloaked, steps forward, inspects tooth, muscle, spirit, then raises a hand. Slave. The word is final. The moment he pronounces it, a guard steps forward to unfasten ropes and roughly bind your wrists behind you. Freedom you have not known since the village fell, and now it vanishes entirely. They herd you through a narrow opening in a palisade of sharpened stakes. Inside, a bustling encampment unfolds, tents of oiled leather, fields of white bone piles, the clang of a smithy forging new axes, the murmur of trade deals. Captives are led to one of two lines, one for those to be sold as menials or bondservants, another for those deemed too weak or rebellious, martyrdom by blade. Your breath catches. You track the second line and see those faces, the elderly, the maimed, the mothers whose wombs are no longer young enough for the slave owner's liking. A cold dread twists in your gut. Could that be you? Before you can think further, a matron of the camp, a tall woman in furs, her hair silvered, approaches. She appraises you with a cool eye, touching your arm, examining your scars. Then she motions you into a wooden stall, where a small bowl of watery broth is set on rough planks. The smell is rank, but your hunger overwhelms disgust. You drop to your knees and lap the liquid from the bowl, eager for warmth, for something to fill the emptiness. The broth coats your throat, reviving a flicker of hope. Tears slip down your cheeks, and you drink until the bowl is empty, trembling with relief and shame. But there is no rest. As you rise, two guards seize you by the elbows and shove you toward a line of laborers. These are men and women assigned to build new ships, repair old ones, and gather firewood for the forges. A blacksmith yells orders. His voice booms over the campfire smoke. You follow the laborers to a pile of logs, axes waiting. The first swing into pine wood echoes like a verdict. The stale broth churns in your stomach as you lift the axe, and your arms shake as you bring it down. The first cut is clumsy. The blade bites only half as deep as it should. The smith pounds the end of the handle with his hammer, shouting a correction in that harsh tongue. You nod, teeth gritted, and try again, once, twice, until the wood splits with a satisfying crack. The sun sinks low, the campfires glow orange against the dusk sky, and the labor presses on. Each swing of the axe, each heave of wood, pushes you further from the person you once were, the peaceful villager who woke to roosters' crows. Now you are a laborer in chains, your life a commodity, your body a tool. Sweat and ash cover you, your muscles burn, but the smith's barked orders leave no room for complaint. Around you, groans and curses rise as others falter. A man collapses beside you, face ashen. You offer a hand, and for a moment he locks eyes with you, a shared glance of defiance or despair, and then he slumps forward, unmoving. You glance around, but no one comes, a guard nods, and the man is dragged away. You swallow hard, grip the axe tighter, and press on. Darkness falls, and lanterns are lit, casting long shadows that dance across rough-hewn boards. Torches sputter in the breeze, and the labor continues under watchful eyes. Hunger returns, your stomach twists. Somewhere, someone howls, a cry that echoes through the night, as raw as the grief that spawns it. You pause, chest heaving, and close your eyes, imagining a sky filled with stars above your home, a sky you may never gaze upon again. You breathe slowly, counting each heartbeat, each second, each moment that you remain alive. This is the end of your first day in captivity, long past the hour you first fell into Viking hands. The initial terror has given way to the grim rhythm of forced labor, to the cold calculus of your value, to the brutal understanding that survival means enduring pain, hunger, and the erosion of all you knew. As you slump against the pile of split logs, the axe still in your hand, you realize that survival is no longer enough. You must find a spark of will, a fragment of hope that refuses to be extinguished by iron shackles and the threat of ever-present violence. For tomorrow, you will swing the axe again, and perhaps, in that act, discover the ember of resistance that keeps the human spirit breathing beneath the weight of oppression. You awaken before dawn, the lantern still guttering low as cold seeps through your bones, and the camp's harsh day begins again. You stretch cramped limbs, each joint stiff and unwilling, and push yourself upright against the rough timber of your bunk. The smell of wet wool and unwashed bodies hangs heavy, and you blink into the half-light, heart hammering as you recall yesterday's horror in vivid flashes. Without a moment's mercy, a guard's axe-sharp shout echoes through the tent, and you scramble to your feet, muscles quivering, mind foggy with exhaustion. Outside, the air is crisp, dew beating on coarse grass, but there is no peace here, only the clank of iron as shackles are unlocked and chained anew to a heavy pull. The smith bellows instructions to gather broken planks and splintered beams, and you join the ranks of the weary laborers, shoulders hunched beneath the burden of wood that feels as heavy as your own despair. Each step toward the smithy is a march into a living nightmare, the dull ache in your back a constant reminder that time and traction yield nothing but toil. As you heave the first beam onto your shoulder, you recall the warmth of your mother's kitchen, the soft glow of hearthlight dancing on her face as she braided your hair. That memory feels like a cruel joke now, an echo from a life receding with every stroke of the smith's hammer. At the forge, you thrust the wood into a pile, then reach for your axe, its handle slick with sweat. The smith snarls, "Chop!" and you bring the blade down in a rhythm so familiar it feels mechanical. 1, 2, 3, until the log splits and your arms tremble with the strain. The ringing crack is the only music here. Mid-morning brings a brief respite as the matron stalks the labor line, flanked by guards who hold bowls of thin gruel. You kneel in the dirt, spoon the lukewarm mash into your mouth, tasting only the grit of unwashed grains, and you swallow hard, willing it to fill the hollow ache in your gut. Around you, the child from your village sits on a low stump, sucking at the spoon with furious desperation, eyes locked on your face as if seeking comfort in a stranger's gaze. You meet his stare, and for a split second, you lean close and whisper hope, foolishness that fades when the matron's roar sends you both scattering back to work. After the meager meal, the smith resets his pace. You chop, haul, and hammer until the sun dips low, sweat and soot painting your skin in the same bruised gray hue. Your hands blister, but you do not cry out. Pain is as constant as breath. You think of sleep, of closing your eyes and leaving the world behind, but the guards' torches flicker through the canvas, and each shadow seems to wait for you to give in. You stare into the dying embers of evening and vow to keep your mind alive, to hold fast to the memory of home, no matter how distant it grows. Night brings only cold and whispering doubt. You curl on your wooden bunk, blankets thin and damp, and ache for a mattress that once felt warm. You listen to the moans of others, the creaks of shackles, the drip of water from a ragged roof. You picture the village you lost, the fields turned to ash, and the faces of those you loved. Tears fall silently, and you clutch the empty air as if cradling a child, begging the darkness to take you instead. Still you survive. Hour by hour, swing by swing you endure. The ember of hope glows in your chest, faint but unextinguished. Tomorrow will bring more labor, more hunger, more cold, but also another dawn. And as long as dawn comes, there is the promise of a sun that warms more than your skin, that might someday light the path home. So you close your eyes, pressing your cheek to the rough wood, and whisper into the dark, I will live. You press your cheek against the rough plank and inhale the cold air, tasting ash and sweat, and somehow that taste becomes a vow, you will live. Beyond the canvas walls, dawn coaxes gray light across the camp, and at its first whisper you're torn from fragile dreams by the harsh clang of the smith's hammer. There is no mercy in this world, only the cadence of labor and the weight of every breath. You rise on wobbly legs, shoulders aching, and stumble toward the fire where the matron stands draped in furs, arms folded like a sentinel of despair. Her eyes flick over you and the others. Late risers, she calls you, and she beckons with a whip-thin finger. You swallow humiliation like sour bread, step forward, and grate your teeth against a scream that threatens to split your ribs. Before you can kneel for the rations of cold porridge, a guard hauls you upright and nods toward the riverbank. Wood, he snarls, voice low enough to be venom in your ear. You press your tongue to your teeth and lock your jaw against complaint, turning toward the forest's edge. A dozen other captives trail behind, each bowed beneath a bundle of logs so heavy your spine hums in protest. The path is slick with dew, boots slip, and you help steady the woman beside you, her face lined with more suffering than years. She murmurs a word of thanks, and for a moment your shared burden feels like kinship, but then the path spits you out onto uneven ground, and you're alone again in your pain. The forest is a cathedral of green silence, shafts of light piercing the canopy, yet you hardly notice the beauty. Your focus is on each step, each breath, each heartbeat that keeps you tethered to life. The logs scrape and clatter as you stumble along, and sweat slides down your temples despite the cool morning. You think of the river at home, of water clearer than tears, of evenings spent washing grain with your sister's laughter in your ears. Here, the only laughter is the crack of twigs underfoot and the occasional grunt from a guard reminding you that this is work, not mercy. When you reach the clearing, the blacksmith's forge lies in ruins, your home's ironworker now gone, his anvil cold under ash. In its place is a new furnace, a ring of stones blackened by soot, a crater dug into earth, and mounds of charcoal waiting to be stoked. The head smith, a hulking figure with arms like oak branches, calls for axes. You drop your logs and pick up a tool from a pile of battered handles and rusted blades. The wood you split yesterday is to become a scaffold for yet another longship, and each strike now feels less like labor and more like a countdown to oblivion. You plant your feet, raise your arms, and swing. The handle quivers in your grip, The blade bites into oak with a groan. You repeat the motion a dozen times, then 100, until your arms burn as if set aflame. Blisters bloom along your palms, and you press a shaking thumb to raw flesh, tasting iron. The smith's bark of approval cracks like thunder, but it offers no comfort, only confirmation that you have passed the first test of the day. You drag the split timber to the hull rising beside you, its ribs curved like a whale's bones, and slide each plank into place under the watchful eyes of the builders. Midday arrives with a hollow flourish. The matron appears again, bearing bowls of stale fish stew. You kneel once more, spoon grit and broth into your mouth, and imagine it was fresh-caught cod back home, cooked over a fire of oak and rosemary. Here, the fish floats in a greasy pool, bones half gnawed by previous supplicants. You choke down each morsel, eyes on the guard's boots, fearing another late meal punishment. Full or empty, you know you'll return to work before your stomach settles. The afternoon drags on in a blur of sawdust and shouts. The longship's keel rises higher each hour, and you become a cog in this war machine, nail driver, plank hauler, rope tear, your hands learning new calluses, your muscles memorizing the path of the blade. Around you, the sea breeze carries the tang of salt and the cry of gulls circling the prow, but your vision never leaves the scarred wood beneath your hands. There is no room to look up, no room to hope for rescue, only the relentless rhythm of work that lulls you toward exhaustion. Yet, in that exhaustion, you discover something unexpected, a clarity. Fatigue strips away fear until only survival remains. Each moment you breathe is a victory, each split log a marker of your will. In the space between swings, you revisit the memory of home, the curve of your mother's cheek as she smiled, the lullaby she sang when nightmares chased you, the gentle weight of your father's hand on your shoulder. Those memories are now a shield stronger than the iron around your wrists. As dusk approaches, lanterns are lit once more, and the camp falls into the familiar hush of forced rest. You collapse beside the hull, propped against its rising side, and watch as the builders step back to admire their work. The longship's lines gleam in torchlight, hulking and proud, a vessel of conquest born from the labor of captives. You feel pride and horror mingle in your chest, pride that your hands helped shape something beautiful, horror at the price paid in blood and indentured lives. A guard approaches, helmet creaking. He points at the ship, then at you. You nod, understanding his wordless command, embark. You climb the rough timbers, each step a battle against sleep and hunger, until you stand on deck. Beneath your feet, the planks flex, the ship rocks, and the sea wind lifts your hair into a halo of hope and dread. Around you, the crew prepares to push off, hoisting sails that catch the dying light like wings. They cast off with a shout, and the longship moves away from the shore, away from the woman nursing her child, from the broken fields and crowded tents. You feel the river's current shift beneath the hull, carrying you into the unknown. Stars emerge overhead, pale and cold, and you wonder if they shine the same over your village. If they witness your return, or your disappearance. But for now you focus on each breath, each heartbeat, each small triumph of will that keeps you upright. You press your palm to the dragon-headed prow, tracing the carved ridges with fingers that ache, and murmur into the night, "I will live." And as the oarsmen resume their rhythm, their strokes echoing the heartbeat of the night, you close your eyes and drift between memories and dreams, clinging to hope as the longship glides into darkness, and into the next chapter of your survival. And so the night drifts away beneath a quilt of stars as the longship cleaves through the dark water, and you find yourself caught between the memory of what was and the dread of what lies ahead. Dawn comes again, pale and reluctant, the first light revealing salt-crusted faces and aching limbs as oarsmen haul in nets of seaweed for manageable fuel. You wake to the creak of timbers and the murmur of Vikings preparing the day's routine, sharpening blades, checking ropes, murmuring to the prow's carved dragon with reverent touches. You press your palm to the cool wood, feeling its carved ridges grow slick beneath your fingers, and you breathe deeply of brine and hope. The ship eases into a sheltered bay, the water shimmering like mercury in the early sun. Warriors leap ashore, boots thudding onto pebbled beach, and you follow, feet sinking into damp stones. The shore is ringed by a dense forest of spruce and birch, silent sentinels to this foreign land you'll soon call home. Your bindings remain tight, iron shackles clamped around your ankles, so you move with halting steps, each one a reminder that freedom is still a distant promise. The leader strides ahead, the dragon-headed prow bobbing gently behind him, and you fall into line with the other captives, shoulders hunched against the chill. A narrow path winds inland, blood-red berries dangling overhead, and the air smells of pine resin and damp earth. The warriors march in pairs, leaving gaps so you can't slip away unseen. Occasionally, one of you spots a game trail or a hidden alcove where you might flee into the green shadows. But each time your heart leaps, the weight of your chains drags you back to reality. Halfway along the path, you glimpse smoke rising above treetops, a cluster of wooden halls and turf-roofed cottages surrounding a central longhouse whose carved dragon beams stretch like welcoming arms. This is the settlement where you will live, a place of feasting and toil, of guest hall revelry and cold northern winters. The captives are herded into a large pen behind the longhouse, where frost-hardened soil divides them from rows of wagons and tethered horses. Here, a woman with braided silver hair, none other than the matron, inspects each of you again, her gaze sharp as flint. She nods at some, dismissing them to labor in the fields. Others, including you, she marks with a slash of charcoal across the wrist, an indelible sign of servitude. 2 guards unshackle you, and you flex cramped fingers to test newfound freedom, though your wrists throb. A slave driver approaches, carrying a ledger of names, and he reads yours aloud. It rings harshly in your ears, as if your voice itself has become a weapon to be wielded. You're assigned to the longhouse kitchen, a steaming heart of the settlement where fires roar and cauldrons bubble with fish broth and barley porridge. Each morning before dawn, you fetch water from a well shaded by gnarled roots. Each noon, you stir vast pots. Each night, you wash wooden bowls and brass ladles until your arms tremble. The matron supervises with a steely eye. One misstep, one dropped utensil, and you taste the sting of her whip-thin rod across your back. Still, the work is bearable compared to the endless chopping and hauling of the shipyard, and you cling to the small mercy of a hearth to warm your bones. As weeks blur into months, you learn more than labor. You learn the rhythm of this place. You memorize each villager's face. The burly smith whose laughter rumbles like thunder, the gaunt trader whose eyes dart like crows, the young shield maiden who trains by the river and pauses to toss you a nod as she passes. You hear scraps of their language, drang, herd, leftage, and imitate their voices in secret, tasting freedom in every vowel. At night you huddle with other captives beneath blankets of woven wool, sharing bits of barley bread salvaged from the kitchen, forging bonds that become lifelines. With each whispered joke, each shared song, fragments of home passed quietly between trees, you rebuild the person you were. One afternoon, a heavy storm rips across the bay, lightning cleaving the sky and thunder shaking the longhouse timbers. The villagers scramble to secure roofs and lash boats to piers, while captives are driven to reinforce the quay with stones and earth. Hail rattles like falling curses, slicing skin through thin tunics, and you crouch beneath a tarp, your hands raw from lifting boulders. A bolt of lightning strikes the dragon beam above the hall's entrance, splintering it. Sparks rain down, and suddenly the entire settlement is uprooted by fear. Gods have spoken, they say, and the omen is mixed. You scarcely notice the superstition, focused only on your blistered palms and the roar of the storm. When the skies clear, a feast is prepared to appease the gods, a roasted boar, mead, honeyed cakes. Warriors gather in the hall to sing and drink. You stand just outside, ladle in hand, as the longhouse warms with song and the scent of roasting flesh. You linger by the doorway, heart hollow, imagining the smell of fresh bread in your mother's oven, the clink of goblets in your own hall at home. A stranger, one of the warriors you passed on the ship, approaches and thrusts a wooden bowl into your hands. Eat, he grunts. You hesitate, but hunger triumphs, and you take a timid sip of creamy porridge. He nods once, then turns back to the reverie. It is a small gift, but in that instant you feel the world shift. Not all who came here despise you. That night you slip beyond the longhouse firelight into the dancing shadows, meeting a handful of captives under a fallen oak. Together you speak in hushed tones of escape, of sailing east on a stolen skiff, of slipping through marshes to distant realms, of reclaiming the sky above your head. Fear tugs at every word, but hope glimmers in your eyes. You find a shard of a map drawn in ash on a broken plank, a crude sketch of coastal inlets and river forks, and you trace the lines with a trembling finger, memorizing paths that might lead home. And so, wrapped in the hush of midnight, you make a pact. When the next feast ends and the warriors swell with drink, you will slip through the guard's idle watch and follow the river's bend toward freedom. Your heart hammers like the smith's hammer on iron. You taste salt on your tongue once more, the promise of wild water beneath you. You clutch a stolen dagger to your chest, its handle warm with the sweat of your hand, and you whisper to the stars, "I will live, and I will return."